What's going on, guys? You got Crave here, and I finally got to finish the 2 novellas, or the additional reading content around the events leading up to the Battle of Lordaeron. More than learning about what happened behind the scenes are the other facets of war and what it does to people. The 2 novellas and recent events has led to some realizations, so here are 6 things I found most interesting about them, and by the way, this will contain spoilers, so watch something else if this isn't to your liking. War tests everyone, and in spite of the Night Elves being more noble in appearance, desperation can creep up when you are put to the limit. In the short novel, A Good War, the rogues of the Horde had really done their job well. They were able to perform simultaneous attacks on the outposts in Ashenvale and severely cripple an already undermanned Kaldorei force. Without any notice, they reduced the number of defenders quietly and without issue. This had angered the Night Elves to such a degree that they had resorted to more brutal means of eliminating any horde that they could find. Now, some of us are aware that the Night Elves portrayed in WoW are a bit different from the Night Elves portrayed in previous games. They were efficient and deadly fighters. In the recent novellas, we see it again, but in a more twisted, well, I would say twisted manner. With the impending loss, some of the horde who had fought against the vengeful Night Elves did not die in efficient ways. They had died slowly through fire. The defenders did what they could to extend the pain even though they knew it wouldn't change the outcome of the battle. The horde would win out in the end. What they were doing was making whoever among the horde suffer for as long as they could. Sylvanas described it well in her thoughts. She was thinking, Malfurion would be very upset to see what his people have done, Sylvanas thought. The wound is open, the bleeding has begun, but they use their hatred in such pitiful ways. While Saurfang is one of the mightiest warriors of the Horde, he isn't without issue, and we've seen that. Some forum posters see him as a potential war chief, but many see him as a has-been, or a weak-willed individual. While I agree with their points, I also see him in a different way, as a broken individual. As mentioned in my last upload, Varrock has lived a very long life. He is celebrated for being a war hero and a legend among warriors, but sorrow and regret has gripped him tightly. He participated in wars where his will was not his own. He slaughtered children and women when he was under the influence of the Legion. He lost his son twice. Now, as the years takes its toll on him, he holds on to 2 more things. 2 last things. He owes his service to any war chief, but the last things he has left are honor and the Horde. Honor was so important to him that when a failed attempt to lure him to a trap was unraveled, he was impressed by the would-be assassin who was defiant to the end. He admired the assassin and wished to know his name. Honor was so important to him that when he mistakenly threw his axe at a preoccupied Malfurion, he did not feel the thrill of the win, but only regret. Sylvanas is fully aware of this. She knows that these 2 things are the only ones that keep pushing Varrock forward. The old war can be a hindrance to her tactics, sure, at winning at whatever cost, but she also knows that removing him from the picture might cause an uproar in the Horde's side. If Saurfang were to lose honor and his Horde, Sylvanas knew the implications of it. She said it best in the short novel, "He would be my enemy, a terrible one." There are leaders who base their decisions solely on reality, and Sylvanas is a prime example of it. There are no considerations other than those that lead to victory. In spite of how cruel she can be, you have to hand it to her. She is brilliant, not just in terms of troop deployment, but in understanding the repercussions of the events of a war. She had a very solid plan in place. By taking Darnassus, the capital of the Night Elven Society, she not only nearly had complete control of Kalimdor, but she also had a very strong bargaining chip. The plan was solid all around. The Alliance would have to think hard on their counterattack. However, things change and plans can go awry. When Malfurion escaped, Sylvanas knew that things had changed. Without the short novel, it might have looked like out of spite when Sylvanas burned the World Tree, but we now have a better understanding of why Darnassus had to burn. The death of Malfurion was not only meant to remove a powerful Alliance figurehead, but also to demoralize Night Elven society. With Malfurion alive, there was one other symbol of hope, the city of Darnassus. Burning the tree was an attempt to destroy not only hope, but it also marks her commitment to what she started. This was her will made manifest. Sylvanas is, however, also a prime example of a leader who has quote-unquote removed herself from her human side. When the initial fireballs hit the World Tree, both the Horde invaders and the captured Night Elves were shocked to silence. Perhaps because it wasn't part of the plan, or maybe because it was a lack of understanding, but they were stunned. Even Saurfang, for a moment, stood in disbelief. This was eventually washed away by the screams. The screams of the captured Night Elven defenders for the Horde to save their families. Varric could hear in his head the cries of the men, women, and children in the capital city of the Elven Society. All knew this would be the end of an era. Inside the burning city, home to many innocents of war, families rushed to portals that could barely usher through one or two individuals at a time. The priestesses and mages, they knew their duties. Even the Queen of Gilneas helped them with the evacuations. They had to deal with the fire, the smoke, the cries of mothers worried for their children, children not understanding what was happening, the smell of burning flesh, flesh that was sliding off the bones, and the very fact that not everyone could make it out alive. The priestesses did their duties to the very end up until the final moments where Elune welcomed them. While it's true that Anduin and the Alliance has forced the Horde out of Lordaeron and thus giving them a better control over the Eastern Kingdoms, I can't help but think how this war has played out so far and whether it was a solid victory for the Seekers of Justice. When you look at the events leading up to the Battle of Lordaeron, you can very much see the cards played by Sylvanas. This whole war, even with the major twists, has been directed by her. Whether she foresaw certain decisions and outcomes, she was the director of these events. Every shift in population, death of squads of soldiers on either side, that was her call or the result of her orders. We can say that many of these were in part the strategy of Saurfang, but in the end it was always the decision of the war chief to proceed or hold back. Sylvanas knew the Horde would face retaliation. Saurfang pointed it out while their Nasus burned. "There is no honor in this. They will come for us now. All of them," Saurfang said. "I know." Sylvanas was calm, as though nothing were wrong. So when Anduin and some of the leaders of the Alliance marched into the throne room, the boy king gave her a choice: surrender or die. Sylvanas calmly walked towards the son of Logosh, son of the former king of Stormwind, and only said that they had won nothing. And just like that, she escaped and bombed the former human capital city, with the plague ensuring that no one else would be able to use it or claim it. The war chief foresaw how the events would play out. She evacuated the Undercity and lured the Alliance into a trap, which Anduin and the other leaders were able to escape. What's important here is that Sylvanas saw how it would turn out. It was a strategic victory for the Alliance, no doubt, but I'm not sure it was morale-wise. It was extremely important for Anduin and the leaders that they capture Sylvanas, as she had to answer for her actions against the Night Elven Society. By not capturing her and the war chief leaving them with a plague-ridden city, it seemed only a partial victory for the Alliance. The Night Elves will want retribution. I wonder how the expansion story will play out. The war chief of the Horde wanted to divide the Alliance, and Anduin, young as he is, understood the power behind a united front. In one of his discussions with Gen, he mentions this. "First Theramore, now Darnassus. They'll have all of Kalimdor except Azure Mist. And mark my words, we'll be evacuating Draenei soon." Gen replied, "Possibly. The strategy is more brilliant than you know." Gen questioned, "How is that?" "The Horde will never conquer an alliance that is truly one. When we are united, we are unstoppable, even without a navy. But if they divide us, they can pick us off one by one." The conversation goes on to Anduin checking Gen's response. Anduin was checking with the King of Gilneans of what he would think if Anduin chose to help the Kaldorei first. It continues with Gen asking Anduin where he had learned so much about strategy, and Anduin humorously replied that he had been focused on reading rather than sparring. Gen then suddenly called Anduin a fool for even thinking what he did. He understood gratitude and what he owed the Night Elves for their hospitality towards his people. While getting his kingdom back was very close to his heart, he said he would never withdraw his support. Just then, Tyrande walked in, and she heard everything that both had mentioned. The priestess mentioned this at the very end. "We shall not be divided, even if my city falls." If I were to fully get into the story, I detest most of Sylvanas' actions, and so far, it's good to hear that at least her plan on dividing the Alliance hasn't worked. It could play out differently as BFA unfolds, as in the Fallout games, war does change everything, and the rock-solid bond may be further tested. Well, that's all that I wanted to share. The 6 things from the short novels and recent events. There were other things that I probably wanted to mention, but I think these were the ones that stood out. From a story perspective, BFA is turning out to be more interesting than it initially let on. But let's see what other things Blizzard can show us as the months go by. Anyway, thanks for checking this out, and I'll talk to you soon.